Every founder is trying to ask the same question: how do I make sure I'm actually growing my business and not just wasting my money on ads? The goal of spending on ads for an e-commerce brand isn't to get a good ROAS, it's to get the most incremental revenue for every dollar of ad spend that you deploy. You want to be able to make confident decisions about which marketing efforts are actually driving value, and one of the best tools that we have for that is attribution. The problem is that attribution doesn't always work the way we'd like it to. Using attribution effectively could be the difference between your brand hitting 8 to 9 figures or you slowly killing your brand without even realizing it. So in this video, we'll talk about how to get the most value out of attribution by understanding how it works, its strengths, its weaknesses, and how to interpret the data that it gives you to make better decisions. At its core, attribution is all about assigning a value to each of your marketing endeavors to identify which ones are driving how much value in terms of incremental growth. Without attribution, it's very difficult to know if any of your advertising efforts are actually working. Take a simplified example. Let's say you have a brand that's doing $100,000 a month in revenue organically with no advertising efforts. Say that brand decides to spend $10,000 on ads and their revenue goes from 100K to 105K. Their media efficiency ratio, or MER, which is just your revenue divided by your advertising spend, looks very good. It's a 10.5. But in our simplified example, we know that we spent $10,000 and only got $5,000 of incremental revenue. That's just a 0.5 ROAS, which isn't great. That simplified example might illustrate the point, but in the real world, things are a lot more chaotic. Baseline revenue goes up and down, and there's a lot of advertising happening on a lot of different channels. It's extremely difficult to know how much value is actually coming from any of these marketing efforts without using something like attribution. So what attribution tries to do is use things like cookies and pixels, UTM codes, and modeling to identify what different users are doing. Naturally, this sort of tracking works better for digital platforms, so that's what we'll focus on. Basically, ads will use certain technology on their platform as well as certain pixels embedded on your website. They'll also add tags to the actual ad URLs as well. A combination of these tools will allow the ad platforms to track that a user clicked on an ad, what they did on your website, and if they completed a purchase. This way, in theory, an ad platform can say that, hey, this user saw your ad, clicked on it, then went to your website and made a purchase. Therefore, I drove that actual revenue. And with that information, you as the brand can say, well, I spent $10 on that ad and I got $100 of revenue. That's a really good return, so let me spend more money on that advertising channel. And when it works, that's extremely valuable because we can identify where we're getting the best bang for our buck for our ad dollars. We can know if one channel is working better than another or if one ad is working better than another. If we know a specific channel is doing better, we can shift more of our ad spend budget there. And if we know a particular ad is doing better, we can try to create more ads like that. It's incredibly valuable information to optimize your marketing strategy. The problem is that it doesn't always work that well. So what are some of the issues that cause attribution to fail? Well, firstly, we have signal loss. Because of an increasing focus on privacy policies and technology, such as when iOS 14.5 prevented apps from tracking your movements across different websites, there's less data for the ad platforms to work with. Essentially, you'll have a lot of users who do interact with an ad, go to your website, make a purchase, and the ad platform just doesn't see it. And that can lead you to inadvertently reduce spend on a channel or an ad that's actually driving value. Another issue is indirect user behavior. A person might interact with an ad on their phone, but then go and make a purchase later on from their computer. Ad platforms do have cross-device tracking that solves this to a certain degree, but it's not perfect. And then you also have the issue of double counting. For example, a person might see an ad on Instagram, click on it, and check out the website. Then a day later, they'll go onto Google, search for the same website, and click on that ad, and then make a purchase. Facebook's going to see that that person clicked on an Instagram ad and made a purchase and take credit for $100 of revenue that it drove. But Google's also going to see that somebody clicked on a Google ad, went to the website, and made a purchase. So it'll also take credit for a $100 purchase. So each platform is going to report $100 of revenue. Meanwhile, in Shopify, you only see $100 instead of $200. Point being, each platform might be seeming like it's driving value, whereas in reality, it's just taking credit for value that was driven by another platform. So given what we know about how attribution should work and what its weaknesses are, how do we actually interpret the data? This is the important part. There are multiple attribution models that determine how credit for certain revenue is allocated to each ad. There is no perfect model, so understanding how these models work can help you understand how to interpret the data. One model considers the differences between click-through attribution and view-through attribution. On Facebook ads, the default attribution method for a new campaign is going to be 7-day click, 1-day view. What that means is that credit will be given to that ad if a user makes a purchase within 7 days of clicking on the ad or within 1 day of viewing the ad. Now, Facebook naturally wants to take as much credit as possible so it can convince brands to spend more on their platform. So you have to understand what each of these attribution methods mean. A view is generally going to be one of the weakest forms of attribution. It's not that it's not true that seeing an ad might make a person more likely to buy. That's how TV ads have worked forever. The issue is that Facebook knows who's been to your website. So for larger brands that have a lot of traffic, it's very easy for Facebook to just sneak in images here and there in that user's journey to be able to take credit for the purchase that they were going to make anyway. It's hard to know if the person made the purchase because Facebook delivered that ad to them later on and they saw it, or if they were going to make a purchase anyway. So it's not that views are useless, it's just that it's a little bit harder to be confident that they actually drove value. A click-through attribution is a lot more reliable though. You can be more confident that an individual purchased because of an ad if they actually stopped and clicked on the ad. In either case though, our goal with advertising is to drive incremental revenue, especially from new customers. For existing customers, we should be able to remarket to them with retention marketing like SMS or email. We don't want to waste our ad dollars marketing to an existing customer who is likely going to repurchase anyway from emails we were sending them. So when you're running Facebook campaigns, you should set up a lot of exclusions to prevent Facebook from going after existing customers. If you don't set up those exclusions, Facebook's going to take advantage and just try to put a whole bunch of ads in front of your existing customers that we're going to buy anyway, and then Facebook is going to take credit for that. Another set of models to be aware of, which you'll see on Google, are going to be first click versus last click versus linear versus data driven. The premise here is that it's trying to determine if a person has multiple interactions with ads, which ad should it give the credit to. For example, say a person went to Google and they just searched water bottles, saw an ad of yours, clicked on it, and then went to your website. Then a week later, they decide to make a purchase, so they type in your brand name, click on your branded search ad, and then go to your website and make a purchase. Under first click modeling, the original ad that was non-branded is going to get the credit, but under last click modeling, the branded search ad's going to get the credit. Now you can decide which ad actually was more impactful in terms of driving that person to make a purchase from you. I would argue in this case the first ad. However, in different user journeys, it's not always that simple. In a scenario where a user has multiple ad touches, meaning that they interact with several ads before making a purchase, you also have linear or data-driven modeling. Linear just means that it'll split the credit of that user's purchase evenly across all the ad touches. And data-driven is just Google's modeling to decide which one of those touches should deserve more credit. While it's not strictly an attribution issue, you also need to consider the impact on Google search of branded ads versus non-branded ads. If our goal is to drive incremental revenue from new customers, you could argue that a non-branded search ad is much more likely to have reached a new user and exposed them to your brand for the first time. Whereas a person who clicked on a branded search ad already knew who you were and likely might have been a customer from before anyway. So oftentimes people will give a lot less credit to branded search in certain attribution models, even though by default with last click, branded search gets the most credit. Because no matter how a person learned about your brand or whether they're existing customers or new customers, they'll often come to your website through a branded search. You also have to consider attribution windows. Generally, Facebook will use a 7-day click window, meaning that a person needs to convert within 7 days of interacting with the ad. But Google will use a much more generous 30-day window. Understanding the differences between these windows and how users interact with each one of those ad platforms can help you interpret the data a lot better. If both Google and Facebook are reporting a 3x ROAS, but Facebook has a much shorter window, then that might mean that Facebook is actually driving more value than Google is. You also have to consider what we discussed before about multi-touch attribution. It's possible that a person who had never heard of you will see an ad on Facebook, click on it, go to your website, leave, and then come back again through a Google branded search. And in that case, you could argue that Facebook really deserves the credit. However, it's also possible that a person did a non-branded search, saw an ad of yours, went to your website, then left, and then Facebook started delivering a whole bunch of remarketing ads to them, which they eventually clicked on and then made a purchase. In that case, it's a little bit trickier. They first found out about your brand and came to your website because of the Google non-branded search. However, the Facebook remarketing might have been what actually pushed them over the edge to make a purchase. So taking all that into consideration, you can see how it can be difficult to interpret attribution data easily to make good decisions. There are some tools that help with this a little bit though. Something like Google Analytics can track all the people coming to your website and where they came from. And you can use the data in there to sort of decide where credit should be given by comparing first click attribution versus last click attribution. Typically though, Google Analytics tends to give a lot of credit to Google Ads. A little bit better than that would be using a third-party attribution tool like Triple Whale or Northbeam. Those platforms will put tracking technology on your website as well as connect to Google Ads and Facebook Ads and any other ad platform to be able to kind of model all that data and bring it together. Even then though, it is a little bit limited because it mostly focuses on click-based data. While view-through data from Facebook can be sometimes misleading, it is still driving some amount of value. The problem is that while Facebook sees that value, it can't share that with Triple Whale or Northbeam. So in reality, good optimization means that you should be looking at multiple data sources. Look at the data that the platforms report as well as the data that your own tools report. You want to look at the ROAS that's being reported inside the platforms to see how much value they think they're driving. You want to look at your overall media efficiency ratio to see that you're spending an adequate amount for the amount of revenue that you're making. And you also want to look at your new customer ROAS, which basically means taking all of your new customer revenue in a given time period and dividing it by your ad spend. And that means all of your ad spend, because there's no good way to know how much of your ad spend is going to new customers versus returning customers. So our assumption is that all ad spend is supposed to go to new customers. And if you take all of that data and apply a bunch of experience and judgment, hopefully you can make better decisions to optimize your marketing. Remember, attribution is not about perfection, and you may have to sometimes sacrifice certainty for actual value. The ultimate goal is to take as much of that data as you can and create a feedback loop so that you can optimize and adjust accordingly. But I get it, it's not easy, it takes a lot of experience. If you're still feeling uncertain about your marketing strategy, feel free to reach out. I work with brands to help them optimize for for growth. And in the meantime, if you're looking to increase your revenue without spending so much on ads, you might enjoy this video on how to optimize your Shopify store's SEO. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.